What's the history and why are we learning this? Okay. So this is payments pursuant to divorce. Now see what happened was before 2018. That means before Tax Cutting Jobs Act was introduced, right? So you won't believe, but there were people who were really praying that Donald Trump wins in India. Why? Because in India and elsewhere, people who I would say CPA aspirant. And I'm pretty sure if Kamala Harris would have come to power, there would have again been a lot of changes in the tax laws. But because the power did not change and it was the earlier guy who was actually imposed all of this, we have not rolled back on the not major changes are being anticipated. People who are in the US and who would know this more than me would comment. Please comment on this, okay? So what happened with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act? We said, let's see what used to happen earlier was this. See, so what is so I'm so we're two very distinct eras now. We call it pre and post what? Pre and post Studying Jobs Act. Other day I was talking to one of my colleagues who said, now see, there's a very strange way of defining everything. Even in a mind, if you think about a timeline, let's say I was, my mother-in-law underwent a surgery. Now, when we are trying to recall when was the last surgery done, what was the point in our head? It was pre-COVID, post-COVID. COVID was such a big thing that it changed our timeline concepts. Now we are remembering certain events pre and post COVID. I met a lady the other day. She was taking her postgraduate degree, so she's working for a doctorate. Now people say it is post COVID, pre COVID. That has become like a timeline. Similarly, 2018 in the US has become like a post Tax Cut and Jobs Act and pre Tax and Cut Jobs Act in the US. So what used to happen earlier? Let's first talk about it. What used to happen earlier was, and now with all of that prenup signing, we know Jeff Bezos, and we know some very Johnny Depp, right? There were so many events where divorce was a big factor. It's a big money making concept, right? Because it's not small money that we're talking about, right? So what he said was this: talk about what used to happen before 2018. So before 2018, we used to say that the person who is paying alimony. So let's say there is spouse one, there is spouse two. Spouse one, spouse two, the divorce settlements went in such a way that there would be some property settlements, obviously. Some property settlements would happen. Now there are some Me Too movements happening in India from the boys also because they're saying that we are at the disadvantaged position. It's a big thing now world over, right? So there would be some kind of property settlements. There would be some kind of child maintenance, right? Why? Because a child is very important. So some figure would go to child maintenance. And some figure would actually be termed as alimony. If you look at it, maybe we're booking everything as alimony, but typically three things happen. First thing is purely property settlement. Some property which would have earlier been a joint property would now need to be given a split ownership between the. So we'll split. We'll say, okay, this is your property, this is my property. You keep the farmhouse, I'll keep the city house, whatever. Some amount would be child maintenance. Then some amount would be just cash for the maintenance of the other spouse. So what we used to do earlier was we used to say that see, let's not touch the child maintenance and property settlement. Why? Because this is important. Okay. So when I made the laws for alimony, I made it at the time when we realized that the person who was paying may be in a more advantageous position than the person who was receiving. So it was more of a scenario where we said that see, I don't bother who was in a good position, who was in the bad position. What we said was this. So think about the child laws also pre 2018. What we said was this. We said, see, if it's a property settlement, I am not having no tax impact. I am not going to have any tax impact for the property settlements. Child maintenance, I think we should not penalize the payments which are made for the child because it's important. It will be for the child's education, this, that. So even child maintenance, I did not have any tax relevance. We said that the person who's paying the money for child maintenance, person who's receiving the money, we have tax anything in the hands of the recipient. So if the recipient gets a property, I'm not going to put that value in the market and say this is the fair market value. Now the person who's receiving, you should be. So this is the payer and this is the receiver. Okay. So we said, okay, for the recipient, property settlement, don't pay any tax. Child maintenance, don't pay any tax. But for alimony, we said that this is the income of the recipient. This is pre, guys, okay? This is the pre-era. We said that if it is income, then whatever monies you are receiving, you will have to pay tax on it. And the person definitely will get his as deduction. Okay. So what used to happen earlier? Property settlement, we will not treat it as a taxable event. Just the ownership would change on paper. When the property would be sold, there would be a tax impact. For child maintenance, who is paying tax? Can we tell me? In this scenario, when the person who's a recipient will not tax it. Somebody is paying money, somebody is paying that money. Who is paying tax on that money? No, Mithal. Pre 2018, spouse 2 would not pay tax on the child maintenance. So understand, okay, there are now a very important concept that I want you to understand, because sometimes when you think like this, no, you will also, these are concepts. If you understand it conceptually, you will yourself be able to figure out what should be the tax. See, there is something called deduction. Okay. Anything which is a deduction or an exclusion. Okay. I'm not paying tax. Okay. So tell me, if I get a deduction, so if I get deduction, I don't get a deduction. So if I get a deduction, what I do, I don't pay tax. Is this clear? If I get a deduction, I don't pay tax. If I don't get a deduction, I pay tax. Do you all agree? If I get a deduction, that means I don't pay tax on it right now. If I don't get a deduction, I will pay tax on it right now. So later, if let's say the money, the best example to teach this is IRA. So when we do IRA as a part of adjustment, you will understand it so very well. But if I get a deduction, I'm not paying tax. So later, if any part of that figure comes back to me, if I'm getting a deduction, I'm not paying tax. So later when this money comes to me, ideally it will become taxable. So today I invest in the IRA. I don't get a deduction. So when I'm not getting a deduction, I'm paying tax. So 30 years later, when I get a payout, I don't pay tax on it, isn't it? Why? Because I've already paid tax. I did not get any deduction. So complete this thought process. If I get a reduction, that means I'm not paying tax. That means tomorrow, whatever money is coming out, I may be required to pay tax. If I don't get a deduction today, that means I'm paying tax on that money. Later on, if that money comes back to me in some form, you cannot ask me to pay tax on it again because you've already paid tax on it once. So what used to happen earlier was, for property settlement and child maintenance, the spouse who's a receiver would get a deduction. They will not pay tax on it. And the spouse who's a payer will not get a deduction. That means the payer spouse will continue paying tax for child maintenance, for property, for everything. Why? Because see, property settlements are outside the tax and nobody pays tax. Child maintenance, we say that see, the earning is of spouse one. That is why spouse one is giving it to spouse two. The earning will be taxed, not the fact that the money is changing hands. But for alimony, we said let spouse 2 get the money. It will be treated as income in the hands of the recipient. Spouse 1 will get it as a deduction. That means who's paying tax? Spouse 2, not spouse 1. So this used to happen earlier. After 2018, we said, okay, this is getting too cumbersome because we have to track the money. We have to figure out how much is child maintenance, how much is not child maintenance. Forget about all of this. We say, okay, now what should we be doing? Okay, what we'll do is make everything constant. Everything will be taxed in the hands of the payer. Nothing gets taxed in the hands of the recipient. But when I did this, can I say all the payments post 2018 will be like that? All the other people pre 2018 alimony agreements will start shouting. Why were we at a disadvantage? So we said, okay, let the boundary line be not be the payment, but the date when the alimony agreement or the divorce settlement was signed. So what we said now was okay, so now I think this will become all very clear. See, was the divorce decree executed before 31st December 2018? That means, was the divorce decree introduced or was the divorce decree signed before 2018? Or was it signed after? It is not about when the payment is being made. It is about when the divorce decree was signed. Because if it was before, If it was before, then I know that the alimony would be, if it was before, then I know that the giving spouse will not pay tax, but the receiving spouse will pay tax. I get a deduction, don't pay tax, but the receiving spouse will pay tax, will not pay tax. So this was what was happening earlier. But if you look at the other things like child support and property settlement, this is what was happening anyways, right? What we did was we said, let the giver spouse pay tax, the recipient will not pay any tax. So this delta was only for alimony. And after 31st December 2018, now we have a universal law. But remember, the divorce agreement must have to be signed after the effective date. After the date of the divorce decree, if it is after 31st December 2018, we say now there's one rule for everything. The recipient does not pay tax on anything, gets as a tax deduction, but the payer will pay tax on everything. No tax deduction. Now, why are we saying tax deduction, tax deduction? Why cannot we just say taxable, non-taxable? Why? Because bank receives money. So I've got the money. Now I'm saying the IRS, I will not pay tax for that. How? I will say, okay, alimony receipt, not tax. So it is allowed as a deduction to me. And the person who's paying it, it's actually a cash outflow. So I have to tell the IRS, see, even though it's an outflow, I will not get a tax deduction for it. It will still be taxable in my hands. So general rule, child support, alimony, property settlements for divorce agreements signed after 31st December 2018, every time the payer pays tax, the receiver pays no tax. So the payer gets no deduction, the receiver gets deduction. Only for alimony, if the agreement is signed before 31st December 2018, you say the payer gets a deduction, does not pay tax, the recipient makes it taxable. So no deduction. So how do you say that it is child support? Okay, now this is very, very important. We'll say it's child support if the divorce decree says this, period. If the divorce decree does not say this, because for me it is going to be very difficult to trace out who is getting the money, how much is going for child support. I don't have to get into all of that. I'll look at the divorce decree, which you should have submitted to me every year. Whatever I see in the divorce decree, I'll just see two things. I will see what is the amount written for the divorce decree, and I will see how much money did you pay. Okay? And if the money was short, you were supposed to pay me $10,000 every year till the child reached 18 years of age. After that, the money would come down to 5,000 rupees per year. So in this case, I know that $5,000 is child support. So either the agreement will tell you directly or the agreement will say something which is incidental about the child achieving a particular age where we would know, okay, this is child support. So what we say, portion for child, so whatever money you give, first I will apply to child support. See, if any amount contingent upon child receiving a particular age, it is called child support. It must be fixed. And I'm not going to go and track you on an individual basis to say how much was child support, how much did you give for tuition, extra classes, this, that. No. I'll just go by divorce decree. Whatever you give, the first amount will go for child support, the balance will go for alimony. And I don't care whether you're mixing this figure. You told me you will pay me 10,000, 5,000 will go for tuition, but I paid you 10,000 and 8,000 went for tuition. None of my headache. Who am I? I'm IRS. I say, look at your agreement. I don't care how much money has been paid and given. All that I will see is how much did you pay? Because if 10,000 is supposed to be paid, but you paid 7. Okay, out of 7, first 5 I will be tax free because I'll assume it is child support, irrespective of whether it is used for child support or not. So IRS is not going to get into the propriety. IRS is not going to get into the actual usage of funds. IRS is just going to look at the divorce decree. That's it. Property settlements, these are considered as transfers by gift. There is no tax effect. So it's a non-taxable event. So this is an example of a non-taxable event. Okay. This is just theory. Generally, to be deemed alimony, the payment must be legally required, pursuant to a written divorce agreement. Payments must be in cash or something which is as good as cash. Has to be stopped with the death of the paying spouse. So the recipient, if that person dies, if the spouse dies, then there's no claim for alimony, period. Payments cannot be made to members of the same household. So it cannot be that you're marrying within the same family, you're going to get this benefit. The payments must not be designated as anything other than alimony, and you guys should have stopped filing joint tax returns. Look at this question. Again, a very good question. If you understand this question, you've understood the concept in and out. What amount of these payments should be reported as income in Martha's 2024 income tax return? Joseph and Martha, so this is spouse 1, this is spouse 2. They were divorced. Okay. Pre-post. Yes, pre-post. So this is pre. Right? Give me the answer for this. A, B, C, or D? 15, A, B, C, or D? So the moment it's pre, I would know that it will be taxed in the hands of the recipient. The alimony will be taxed, not the child support. And where would I see which is alimony, which is child support? I'll just go to the divorce decree. I care nothing about what is actually the usage. And where is it being used? Are you actually paying it for child support? Are you paying it for your support? I'm not interested in the propriety of that. The divorce decree provides that Joseph will pay alimony of $10,000 per year to be reduced by 20% in 5 years on their child's 18th birthday. Okay, how much of it is child support? Can anybody tell me how much of it is child support? Of the entire $10,000 given, how much of it? Okay, you're going to usage. Ankita, what did I tell you? Stop. I'm not bothered about the usage. I'm only bothered about the divorce decree. What is written in the decree? I'm going to pay you 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. The moment your 6 hits, I will make it 8,000, 8,000, 8,000, 8,000. Why? Because the child has reached 18th birthday. After that, my responsibility for child payment stops. So out of this 10,000, 8,000 is alimony and 2,000 is child support. Where will I see the portion? Not on actual usage, but in the divorce decree. During the current year, Joseph paid 7. So now what I'm interested, first question I've got. I've understood the divorce decree says pay 10,000, 2,000 for child support, 8,000 for alimony. What is the second input that I need? I only need one more input. How much was paid in total? The breakup, I'm not interested. I paid 7,3. All of this I'll not even read. It's not relevant. I paid 10, so I paid full. I go back to divorce decree. I forget what you did. You paid for your tuition, your daughter's tuition, your son's tuition. I'm not interested. IRS says, see, I'm not going to go for every party and see the individual breakup. I will go by the divorce decree. But you paid, why is it relevant? Because the moment you pay, let's say 3,000. Then if it is 3,000, let's say instead of 10,000, you pay me 3,000. What will I do? I will say, okay, child support, okay, child support. So I'll break this. Child support, it will be always first 2,000 and then alimony would be 1,000. It was 10,000. I know child support is 2 and alimony is 8. Is this clear? The quick question. What if now I say the total payment was only 1,500? How much is child support? How much is alimony? Yes? If I tell you that the total money which was paid by Joseph to Martha, COVID hit, Joseph had no earnings, he could pay only $1,500. Full amount will go to child support, 1,500, none to alimony. Have you understood the concept? All that we want to know is pre-post, that's the first data, understood. Second concept, I want to know how much was the alimony and child support from where? Not an actual usage, on the divorce decree. Then the third concept. Now I want to know how much was totally paid. That's it. The moment I have this information, I am not interested in knowing how much was exactly, how much was the split. I'm not interested. So in this question, we know child support, it's pre-figure, right? So the moment it is pre, I know child support will not be taxable, but alimony would be taxable. So in my example, what is the answer? A, B, C, or D? Mitali, give me 1 second. What is the answer? A, B, C, or D? I got 10 and 2 would be child support, 8 would be alimony. 2 will not be taxable, 8K would be taxable. Okay, Mitali, unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
See, if I would have paid 1500,
Hmm.
till 2000 it will be child support, right? I could
Yes,
not
ma'am.
pay 2000. So
Hmm.
1500 it is, so it's like this. See, if it is pre, okay, if it is a pre 2018 divorce agreement, whatever you pay
Hmm.
first will be child support.
Okay.
And anything that crosses child support would
Yes,
be
ma'am.
alimony. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you do not cross child support, you
Hmm.
will treat everything as child support. Let's say
Okay.
if I now ask you only 3500 was paid, what will you say? How much is child support?
2000 is child support and rest of the 15 will gonna be alimony.
Okay, next question. Only 1000 was paid.
Okay, 1000 complete will gonna be in child support as 2000 the
You
limit
would
for
be
the
alimony.
child.
Have you understood?
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Okay, and secondly, we're not interested in the actual split. And see, this question is such a smart question. And
Hmm.
there was only one student in my entire career of 13 years who told me that thing. See what it's written? Joseph paid 7,000 directly to Martha, which is the spouse, and 3,000 to Springs College for whose tuition? Not the child's tuition. Can you see it is Martha's tuition? So anybody who would go and say, oh, they will just assume. Do you see? I will just assume this 3,000 is for the child. But no, it was not for the child. It was for the mother only. So nothing was actually used for child support. The entire money was used by the mother. But will I say no, I will not allow this as a child support? You will have to pay tax on full time. The answer is no. I'm not going to go into the proprietary of the actual spend. I will simply concentrate and we'll only talk about what's written in the divorce decree.